Hey everyone, and welcome to this Grade 8 Civics Explainer. So, whether you're scrolling through TikTok, checking out a news feed, or just browsing online, you are literally being bombarded by information nonstop. Today, I'm super excited to be your guide as we build something absolutely crucial for navigating all that noise, your very own critical media literacy toolkit. You see, knowing how to sort fact from fiction, it's not just some neat trick to have up your sleeve. It is an absolute requirement for active citizenship. Today, we're going to learn exactly how to evaluate what we see, read, and hear, just like true civic investigators. Let's get into it.
Here is our quick roadmap for today's journey. 1. Media and public opinion. 2. Authorship and historical context. 3. Corroboration and evaluating evidence. 4. Misinformation versus disagreement. And finally, 5. A recap and a transfer question to test your skills.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, Media and Public Opinion.
We have to start with a massive foundational claim here. The media deeply influences our perception of reality. And if we look at two powerful concepts, framing and priming, we can actually see exactly how this works. The media frames what it presents by picking specific pictures, certain angles, or unique details to highlight. That directly creates our perception of an issue. Plus, it can actually prime citizens to think in a specific way. This means the way something is covered today changes how you're going to react to new information when you stumble upon it tomorrow. It literally sets the stage for your future opinions.
Think of it kind of like this. The media isn't just some passive mirror perfectly reflecting the world back at us. No, it acts as an active lens. By choosing which stories even get covered, how they're covered, and exactly what details get the spotlight, the media, as the OpenStax text puts it, actively cultivates our reality. And that is exactly why we have to be critical consumers of information. Because the frame we are looking through, well, it was intentionally chosen by someone else.
Now, another huge factor hiding in your daily newsfeed is corporate ownership. The evidence shows us that large media conglomerates, these are just massive corporations that own dozens and dozens of stations and networks, can effectively create monopolies. So why does this matter for your civics toolkit? Well, when a few giant conglomerates own everything, they can seriously decrease the diverse flow of information reaching the public. It means you might only be hearing one specific side of a story simply because all the different outlets you check happen to be owned by the exact same parent company.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2. Authorship and historical context.
Our very first major tool in the kit is inspecting authorship. And this is tied really closely to the intended audience, basically the desired recipients of a source. Understanding this is absolutely crucial. Whenever you look at an article, you've got to ask yourself, wait, who actually wrote this and who are they writing it for? Sometimes it's super obvious, right? Like a speech being given to a very specific crowd. But other times, you kind of have to infer it just from the language they're using. Knowing the intended audience instantly helps you uncover a source's underlying purpose and any potential biases they might be sneaking in.
And right next to that is our next tool, historical context. This means the setting, the background, or the environment of an event. You really cannot separate a document or news report from the time it was actually created. I mean, think about it. A political opinion from 50 years ago means something entirely different than that exact same opinion expressed today, mostly because the societal background is completely changed. You always have to consider the cultural and political factors at play.
Which leads us to a pretty simple truth. Context dictates meaning. Whether citizens are out voting, protesting, or sitting on juries, those actions really only make sense when you understand the government and the society around them. Time, setting, background, they impact all sources. You can never just read the text, right? You always have to read the context. All right, let's do a quick pause check. I want you to actively think about this one for a second. If you're reading a political article online, what two foundational elements must you inspect before you even consider accepting its claims? Take a quick second to think. And here is the answer. Based on the rigorous guidelines of the C3 framework, you must first inspect the authorship, meaning who wrote it and who they wanted to read it, and the historical context, meaning the background setting and environment of the piece. Honestly, if you skip these two steps, you are pretty much flying blind in the modern media landscape.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, Corroboration and Evaluating Evidence.
In the wild world of civics, a single source is rarely enough to actually prove a point. We have to look for what we call corroborative value. Basically, that means the extent to which information from one source actually supports information from another. If you read some shocking, crazy claim on a random blog, you have to play detective,
Do three completely different news outlets report those same fundamental facts? Does hard economic data support that personal letter? Good civic investigators always demand corroboration.
And investigators in different fields actually rely on corroboration in different ways. Political scientists, for example, they're going to look for statistical analyses and heavy theories to substantiate claims. Historians, on the other hand, look for accounts of human behavior paired with evidence corroboration. But the big takeaway here? It's not just about having an opinion. It's about backing that opinion up with a solid preponderance of structured, corroborating evidence.
Which brings us to a massively important point. Listen to this. Just because something is published does not make it factual evidence. Not all sources are equal in value. Evidence is the material carefully, specifically selected from high-quality sources to support or counter a claim. A random angry tweet is a source, sure, but it is definitely not automatically evidence.
Let's transition into Section 4, Misinformation versus Disagreement. So, healthy civic debate relies entirely on one thing: evidence. The C3 framework defines claims as statements of belief that are deeply rooted in factual knowledge and evidence that comes from analyzing sources. Counterclaims, then, are statements that respond to those original claims using evidence that contradicts them. Did you notice the key word in both of those definitions? Yep, evidence. True, healthy civic debate requires hard evidence on both sides.
There is a massive, absolutely huge difference between a valid counterclaim and what experts call wildly speculative conjecture. Look, anyone can just make up an answer to a complex question, right? No matter how opinionated they are. But an imaginative guess is not understanding. If you challenge a policy using actual facts, that is healthy disagreement. If you challenge it with made-up wild theories, well, that is just misinformation.
To truly understand any civic issue, you have to do the rigorous, hard work of transforming raw data into actual evidence-based claims. Honestly, this is the only shield we have to separate unverified opinions from actual facts. Remember this rule of thumb: without evidence, you just have an opinion. With evidence, you have an argument.
Let's do our second pause check right here to apply this. Imagine you're watching a heated political debate. If someone challenges a civic policy using only wildly speculative conjecture and absolutely zero facts, is that considered a valid counterclaim in our civic framework?
The answer is a firm no. The C3 framework is super clear that true counterclaims require actual evidence. You cannot just use imaginative conjecture or your own unverified personal opinion to contradict a well-researched claim. Genuine disagreement requires you bringing your own facts to the table. Otherwise, you're not debating, you're just contributing to misinformation.
And finally, Section 5, Recap and Transfer Question.
Let's quickly pack up your brand new Media Literacy Toolkit. Whenever you consume media, be sure to recognize how framing and priming might be actively shaping your emotions. Inspect the authorship and the intended audience, analyze the historical and governmental context, demand corroborative value across multiple different sources, and always remember, true, democratic disagreement requires evidence-backed counterclaims, not speculative misinformation.
And that brings us to our final transfer question for you to take out into the real world. Think about this. How will you use the tools of corroboration and historical context to evaluate the very next news article you see pop up on your social media feed? Next time you see a headline, don't just scroll past it. Stop, crack open your toolkit, and uncover the facts for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for this Grade 8 Civics Explainer, and hey, stay curious out there.